The first thing everyone noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind. The heavy, uncomfortable silence that settles when something is wrong and no one wants to be the first to say it out loud. The little girl stood barefoot on the cracked sidewalk outside the shelter, her arms wrapped tightly around the neck of the German shepherd. Her fingers were buried deep in his fur, gripping as if letting go might make the world collapse beneath her feet. "Sweetheart," a woman said gently from behind her, "you have to step back now." The girl didn't move. The dog didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't bare his teeth. He simply stood there, solid, unmoving, his body positioned squarely between the child and the people approaching. A retired K9 still working. 2 police officers stood a few feet away, exchanging uncertain glances. One of them, Officer Mark Reynolds, shifted his weight and sighed quietly. "This wasn't supposed to go like this," he muttered. The call had been routine. A child refusing to release a dog at the city shelter. Possible emotional distress. No immediate danger. At least, that's what the report said. But now that he was here, watching the girl cling to the aging German shepherd like he was the last solid thing in her life, Reynolds wasn't so sure. "Can you tell us your name?" he asked, lowering his voice. The girl shook her head. The dog's ears flicked at the sound of the officer's voice, but his eyes never left the girl. His breathing was slow, deliberate, controlled. Years of training still lived inside him, even if the badge had been taken away. Reynolds noticed the scars first. Faint ones along the dog's muzzle, a deeper line near the shoulder, the kind you don't get from being a pet. "This dog used to work," Reynolds said quietly to his partner. "You can tell." His partner nodded. "Yeah, and he hasn't forgotten." The shelter director approached cautiously, hands raised. "Honey, that dog isn't yours," she said softly. "He's been here a long time. We just need to take him back inside." The girl's grip tightened. "No," she whispered. It was barely audible, but the dog reacted instantly, his body tensing just enough to be noticed. Reynolds took a step forward. "It's okay," he said. "No one's going to hurt you." That's when the girl finally looked up. Her eyes were red, exhausted, older than they should have been. "You can't take him," she said. "He's not dangerous." No one had said he was, but everyone was thinking it. The dog's name was Ranger. At least, that's what the faded tag on his collar said. He was 9 years old, retired, declared unsuitable for continued service after a handler injury and a department restructure that left several K9s without partners. No behavioral issues, no aggression reports, just surplus. The shelter had been his home for almost a year, until the girl showed up. Her name was Lena. She was 8 years old and had been bouncing between temporary housing facilities since her mother died the previous winter. No father listed, no relatives willing to take her in. She didn't speak much, didn't cry in front of adults, didn't trust easily. But the moment she saw Ranger in the corner of the shelter yard, lying quietly, watching everything without asking for attention, she stopped walking. "He looks tired," she'd said. That was all. Over the next few weeks, Lena came back whenever she could, sometimes with a social worker, sometimes alone, after slipping away from the group home down the street. She never asked to pet Ranger. She just sat near him, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours, and Ranger stayed. He didn't rush her, didn't beg for affection, didn't demand anything. He watched, waited, listened. The staff noticed the change in him before they noticed the bond. Ranger stopped pacing, stopped refusing food, stopped staring endlessly at the gate like he was waiting for a command that would never come. Instead, he waited for Lena. And when she didn't show, he grew restless again. Back on the sidewalk, Officer Reynolds exhaled slowly. "Kid," he said gently, "we need you to step back." Lena shook her head. "He said you would do this," she whispered. Reynolds frowned. "Who said?" Lena buried her face into Ranger's neck. "The man who told me not to trust anyone." That was when the silence deepened, and Ranger for the first time growled, low, controlled, not a threat, a warning. Officer Reynolds didn't react to the growl. He'd worked with canines long enough to know the difference between aggression and communication. This wasn't anger, it was recognition, something Ranger remembered. "Easy, boy," Reynolds said calmly, lowering his hands a fraction. "No one's crossing any lines." Ranger didn't relax. His eyes were fixed past the officers toward the shelter entrance, toward the parking lot beyond it, toward the place where movement had just stopped. Reynolds followed his gaze. A man stood near the edge of the lot, half hidden by a dented pickup truck. He wasn't doing anything unusual, no sudden movements, no shouting, just standing there, hands in his pockets, watching, waiting. Reynolds felt the familiar tightening in his gut. "Who is that?" he asked quietly. The shelter director squinted. "I don't think he's staff." Lena's fingers dug deeper into Ranger's fur. "That's him," she whispered. Reynolds turned to her. "Lena, I need you to tell me something. Who is that man?" She shook her head hard. "He said not to say his name." Ranger growled again, lower this time, closer to a rumble than a sound. The man by the truck shifted his weight and smiled. Reynolds didn't hesitate. "Sir," he called out, "can you come over here for a moment?" The man raised his hands slightly, palms open, like someone used to playing innocent. "Sure, officer," he said easily, walking forward. "Is something wrong?" Up close, he looked ordinary, mid-30s, clean clothes, no visible tattoos, the kind of face that disappeared in a crowd, the kind people didn't remember. "My name's Paul," he added. "I volunteer sometimes. Kids like dogs. That all this is." Reynolds nodded slowly. "You know the girl?" Paul shrugged. "Seen her around, that all." Lena's breathing changed. Ranger felt it instantly. He stepped half a pace forward, placing more of his body between Lena and the man. Paul noticed. His smile tightened. "Dog doesn't seem very friendly." "He's retired," Reynolds replied, "but he's still trained." Paul laughed lightly. "Guess some habits die hard." Ranger's ears flattened. Reynolds knelt slowly beside Lena, careful not to startle her. "You said he warned you," Reynolds said gently. "Warned you about what?" Lena's eyes flicked toward Paul, then back to Ranger. "He said if I talked," she whispered, "they would take him away." The words hit Reynolds like ice water. "Take who away?" he asked, even though he already knew. She hugged Ranger tighter. "Him." Paul's smile vanished. "That's ridiculous," he said sharply. "Kids making things up." Ranger barked. Once, sharp, controlled, final. Every conversation stopped. Reynolds stood. "Sir," he said calmly, "I'm going to ask you to step back to your vehicle." Paul's jaw tightened. "I haven't done anything." "Not yet," Reynolds replied, "but this situation just changed." Inside the shelter, staff whispered nervously. One of the volunteers leaned toward the director. "That dog's never barked like that before." The director swallowed. "He's protecting her." Outside, Lena's hands trembled. "He knows," she whispered. "Ranger knows." Reynolds glanced down at the old German shepherd. "Knows what, kid?" Lena took a shaky breath. "He smells bad," she said. Reynolds frowned. "Bad how?" "Like the room with no windows," she whispered. "Like the place where he said I had to be quiet." Ranger's growl returned, deeper now, more urgent. Paul took a step back. "That's enough," he snapped. "You're letting a scared kid and a dog turn this into something it's not." Reynolds reached for his radio. "Dispatch," he said evenly, eyes never leaving Paul. "I need a background check on a Paul. No last name yet. Male, mid-30s, currently at the city animal shelter." Paul's eyes widened for just a second. That was all Ranger needed. The dog lunged forward, not at Paul but past him, straight to the truck. Ranger stopped at the open tailgate and barked again, louder this time, nose pressed hard against a torn tarp. Reynolds moved instantly. "What is he alerting on?" his partner asked. Reynolds pulled the tarp back. Inside the truck bed was a mattress, blankets, and a small pink backpack. Lena gasped. "That's mine." Paul turned and ran. Paul didn't get far. He made it halfway across the parking lot before Ranger's bark cut through the air again, short, sharp, commanding. The sound snapped Reynolds into motion. "Stop, police!" Reynolds shouted, already running. Paul vaulted a low fence, stumbled, and disappeared into the alley behind the shelter. Sirens wailed in the distance as Reynolds' partner called for backup, but Ranger wasn't waiting for anyone. He moved with the precision of a dog who had done this 100 times before. Ranger tracked, not the frantic sprint of an untrained animal, but the measured pace of a canine who knew the difference between panic and purpose. His nose skimmed the asphalt, then lifted, then dipped again, mapping fear by scent, stitching together a story no human could see. Reynolds followed, breath burning, boots slapping concrete. "Ranger, easy," he called. Ranger didn't slow. He cut left at the dumpster, right at the chain-link gate, then stopped dead. Paul was crouched behind a stack of pallets, hands up, chest heaving. His eyes darted between Ranger and Reynolds, calculating. "It's a misunderstanding," Paul said quickly. "I was scared, that's all." Ranger stood 3 feet away, teeth bared, but controlled, not attacking, holding. Reynolds cuffed Paul without ceremony. As they led him back, Ranger didn't take his eyes off the man. Not once. Back at the shelter, Lena sat on the curb, arms wrapped around herself now that Ranger had gone. A blanket draped over her shoulders, offered by a volunteer who didn't quite know what to say. When Ranger returned, Lena looked up instantly. "He's okay," Reynolds said softly. "You're safe." Ranger walked straight to Lena and sat in front of her, close enough that she could feel his breath. He leaned in, pressing his forehead gently against her chest. Lena exhaled for the first time in what felt like weeks. "You came back," she whispered. Ranger's tail thumped once. Inside the truck, detectives photographed everything. The mattress, the blankets, the backpack. One of the detectives opened the backpack carefully. Inside were clothes that didn't belong to a shelter kid. A notebook, a crumpled bus pass, a photo, creased from being folded too many times, Lena and Ranger, taken from a distance. Reynolds felt his stomach drop. "This wasn't random," he said quietly. "He's been watching her." The shelter director nodded shakily. "He always showed up on the days she did?" At the station, Paul's story unraveled quickly. He volunteered sometimes. He liked helping kids. He didn't remember names, but Ranger remembered him. In the interview room, Paul kept glancing at the door, at the hallway beyond it, at the place where Ranger waited, silent and still, just out of sight. "Why does the dog react to you?" Reynolds asked. Paul swallowed. "I don't know." Reynolds slid a photo across the table, the backpack in the truck. Paul's jaw tightened. Then Reynolds said the words that broke him. "We found the room." Paul's shoulders slumped. It turned out Paul rented a storage unit on the edge of town. No windows, soundproofed. Inside were toys, clothes, a folding bed, locks installed from the outside, and the smell Ranger had never forgotten. Months earlier, Ranger had worked a missing child case that went cold. The scent was similar, faint, layered with cleaning chemicals and fear. The case was closed when the trail ended, except it hadn't. Ranger had remembered. When Lena hugged him for the first time, he had stiffened, not from affection, but recognition. The same fear scent, the same residue of confinement. He hadn't understood it, until Paul appeared. Lena gave her statement that evening, curled in a chair too big for her feet to touch the floor. A child advocate sat beside her, speaking softly, letting Lena control the pace. "He said he could help me find a home," Lena whispered. "He said Ranger was dangerous, that people would take him away if I talked." Ranger lay at her feet the entire time, eyes open, body still. "He said the dog would leave me," she said. "So I stayed quiet." Reynolds felt a tightness in his chest he didn't try to hide. "You did the right thing," he said. "You were protecting yourself." Lena shook her head and looked down at Ranger. "I was protecting him." Ranger's ears flicked. By midnight, the news spread. A volunteer tipped off a reporter, then another. The words "retired K9" and "child" traveled fast. Ranger was moved to a quiet room for the night. Lena fell asleep on a cot nearby, fingers still curled in his fur. Outside, Reynolds stared through the glass. "That dog didn't just stop a crime," his partner said quietly. "He finished one." Reynolds nodded. "And now they're going to try to take him away." The call came just before dawn. Department administration. "Officer Reynolds," the voice said, formal and careful, "we need to discuss the dog's status." Reynolds closed his eyes. "Ranger acted without a handler," the voice continued. "We have liability concerns." Reynolds looked at Ranger through the glass, old, scarred, calm, still guarding a child who finally slept. "He saved her," Reynolds said. "That may be," the voice replied. "But protocol," Reynolds cut in. "Protocol didn't smell fear. Ranger did." Silence. Then, "Bring them both in. We'll decide." Reynolds hung up and whispered to himself, "Here we go." The conference room felt colder than it should have. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the way everyone inside avoided looking directly at Lena. She sat at the far end of the long table, feet dangling above the floor, Ranger pressed tightly against her side. His chin rested on her knee, eyes forward, posture calm but alert. Across from them sat three people who had never met Lena before today, an administrator from the department, a city legal representative, and a behavioral specialist with a clipboard held a little too tightly. Officer Reynolds stood near the wall, arms crossed. "This is highly irregular," the administrator said, breaking the silence. "A retired K9 engaging in active intervention without a handler creates a serious liability issue." Lena didn't understand the words. She understood the tone. "They're mad at him," she whispered. Ranger's ears flicked, but he didn't move. "We acknowledge the dog's role in the apprehension," the legal representative continued, "but emotional attachment between a civilian child and a former police asset raises red flags." "Asset?" Reynolds snapped. "He's not equipment. He's a living being." The behavioral specialist glanced up, and that's precisely the problem. Lena's grip tightened on Ranger's fur. "You can't take him," she said softly. The administrator sighed. "No one is saying that yet." Ranger shifted, just enough to place more of his body between Lena and the table. The specialist made a note. "What we're concerned about," the specialist said, "is dependency, trauma bonding. This dog may be reinforcing fear rather than helping the child process it." Reynolds shook his head. "With respect, you didn't see her before him." "No," the specialist replied calmly, "but we've seen cases like this before." Lena looked up. "I'm not broken," she said. The room went still. Ranger lifted his head and looked at her. "I know when I'm scared," Lena continued, voice shaking but firm, "and I know when I feel safe. He makes me feel safe." No one spoke. The administrator cleared his throat. "The issue isn't how you feel. It's what's best for you long term," Lena whispered. He stayed. Outside the room, cameras flashed. The story had leaked. Retired police dog stops. Abduction attempt. Child refuses to be separated from K9 hero phones, buzzed non-stop. Public opinion moved faster than policy ever could. That afternoon, Lena was taken to a temporary care facility while decisions were reviewed. Ranger wasn't allowed inside. The moment the door closed between them, Lena screamed. Not a tantrum. A sound ripped straight from her chest. Ranger lunged forward, claws scraping the floor, straining against Reynolds' grip. "Easy, boy," Reynolds whispered desperately. "Please." Ranger's bark echoed down the hallway. Not angry, panicked. Lena collapsed onto the floor inside, sobbing, fists pounding the tile. "They promised," she cried. "They promised he wouldn't leave." Ranger lay flat on the other side of the door, body pressed against it, nose at the crack, breathing fast and shallow. For the first time since the shelter, he whined. That night, Lena didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't sleep. Every hour, she sat up and whispered his name. "Ranger." On the other side of the building, Ranger stayed awake too. Every sound. Every footstep, every door, waiting. At 2:17 a.m., the facility's night supervisor made a call she wasn't supposed to make. "I don't care about protocol," she whispered into the phone. "That child is unraveling." Reynolds was there in 10 minutes. He brought Ranger. The moment Lena saw him, she broke. Ranger rushed forward and pressed his body against her, tail wagging uncontrollably now, control finally slipping as relief flooded him. Lena clung to him, sobbing into his fur. "You came back," she cried. Ranger licked her cheek once, then curled around her protectively. The supervisor wiped her eyes. "I've never seen anything like that." Reynolds nodded. "Neither has the system." By morning, the story was everywhere. Not just the rescue, the separation, the scream, the dog who refused to leave the door, and now the question everyone was asking: should the law protect rules or people? By sunrise, the story had escaped the city. By noon, it was everywhere. Phones buzzed in the department offices. News vans lined the street outside the temporary care facility. Headlines scrolled across screens in bold letters. "Retired K9 stops abduction. Child separated from hero dog." "Don't take him away," girl pleads. Officer Reynolds watched the footage in silence. The clip looped endlessly. Lena's arms wrapped around Ranger, the moment of separation, the scream that followed. It wasn't sensationalized. It didn't need to be. It was real, and people felt it. Inside the facility, Lena sat cross-legged on the bed. Ranger's collar clutched tightly in her hands. She hadn't been allowed to keep him with her after the emergency reunion the night before. Temporary access, they'd said. Temporary. Every time a door opened, Lena looked up, hope flashing and fading just as quickly. "He's coming back," she whispered to herself. "He promised." Across town, Ranger paced, back and forth, back and forth. The kennel they'd placed him in was clean, quiet, safe, but it wasn't where Lena was. Ranger pressed his nose to the gate and exhaled slowly, steadying himself the way he always did before something hard. Waiting. The department meeting was tense. Legal counsel argued liability, administration argued precedent, public relations argued optics, and Reynolds argued truth. "That dog didn't malfunction," he said firmly. "He performed. He identified a threat none of us did." "But the emotional response," one official countered. The bond saved her life," Reynolds shot back, "and possibly others." Silence followed. Then the behavioral specialist spoke again. "There is another option," she said carefully. All eyes turned. "We could formalize the bond instead of breaking it." The room leaned in. "Explain," the administrator said. The specialist adjusted her glasses. Ranger could be reassigned, not as a law enforcement asset, but as a therapeutic companion under monitored placement. The legal counsel frowned. "With a civilian child?" "With oversight," the specialist replied. "With support and with conditions." Reynolds' heart pounded. "And Lena?" he asked. "She would be placed in a long-term foster arrangement," the specialist said, "preferably with someone trained to support trauma recovery." The room went quiet. "Preferably," the administrator said slowly. "Someone Ranger already trusts." Outside, the crowd grew. Signs appeared. "Let him stay, hero dog, family, don't break them." Lena watched the news from the facility common room, hugging her knees. "They're fighting," she whispered. A volunteer nodded gently. "For you." "For him," Lena corrected. That afternoon, Lena was escorted to a press briefing room. She froze at the door. "I can't," she whispered. Reynolds knelt beside her. "You don't have to say much. Just the truth." Lena swallowed hard. She stepped forward. Cameras clicked. Microphones leaned in. "Why do you want the dog to stay?" a reporter asked. Lena looked straight into the lens. "Because he stayed when no one else did," she said. The room went silent. "And because," she added softly, "he knows when I'm scared before I do." Somewhere behind a screen, Ranger lifted his head. The decision came just before sunset. Reynolds stood in the hallway when the administrator approached him. "We're approving the reassignment," he said quietly, "under strict conditions. Reynolds exhaled shakily. And the child? The administrator hesitated. She won't lose him. Reynolds didn't wait. He ran. The hallway felt endless. Officer Reynolds's boots echoed against the floor as he moved faster than protocol would ever allow. Papers were still being signed, conditions still being debated, but some moments didn't wait for ink. When the door to the common room opened, Lena looked up. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. Then Ranger stepped inside. For a split second, time broke. Lena didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't hesitate. She ran. Ranger met her halfway, lowering himself just in time as she threw her arms around his neck. His tail wagged so hard it knocked against the chair behind him, control finally gone, discipline forgotten. He pressed his face into her shoulder, breathing her in like he was memorizing the fact that she was real. "You came," she whispered into his fur. Ranger whined softly, a sound no one had ever heard from him before. Reynolds turned away, swallowing hard. The room stood still. Social workers, officers, volunteers, reporters behind the glass. No one spoke, because there was nothing left to explain. This wasn't dependency. This wasn't confusion. This was recognition. The paperwork followed later. Ranger was officially reassigned as a therapeutic support companion, permanently bonded to Lena under monitored placement. Lena was approved for a specialized foster program, one that understood trauma, stability, and the importance of continuity. One condition stood above all others. They would not be separated. When Lena heard that part, she hugged Ranger again, this time gently, like she was afraid squeezing too hard might wake her from a dream. "He's staying," she whispered. Ranger sat tall beside her, always had. The media storm didn't fade overnight, but it changed tone. Former K9 becomes child's protector. When the system listened, a dog did what policy couldn't. People wrote letters. Veterans recognized Ranger's posture. Therapists recognized the signs of safety. Parents recognized the fear in Lena's eyes. And slowly, the outrage softened into something else. Hope. Weeks later, Lena moved into her new home. It wasn't perfect, but it was quiet. And Ranger walked through the door first, nose low, scanning corners, checking shadows, doing what he'd always done. Once satisfied, he lay down at the foot of Lena's bed. That night, Lena slept without the light on for the first time in years. At school, children asked questions. Is he dangerous? Did he bite someone? Why does he follow you everywhere? Lena smiled. He's not dangerous, she said. He's careful. Ranger lay beside her desk, eyes half closed, listening, waiting. One afternoon, Lena asked Reynolds something that caught him off guard. Do police dogs miss their jobs? She asked. Reynolds thought about it. They miss purpose, he said finally. Lena nodded and looked down at Ranger. I think he found it again. Ranger's tail tapped the floor once. The house was quiet, not the empty kind of quiet that made Lena nervous. The good kind, the kind that felt earned. Morning light filtered through the curtains, spilling softly across the floor where Ranger lay stretched out, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. His muzzle had grown a little whiter over the months, his movements a little slower, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching, still waiting. Lena padded down the hallway in socked feet, careful not to wake him. She paused at the doorway, studying him the way she often did now, like she was afraid one day she might blink and he wouldn't be there. You're still here, she whispered. Ranger opened one eye. Just one. His tail tapped the floor once. That was enough. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Lena still had days when loud noises made her flinch, still had nights when memories crept in uninvited, still carried the weight of things no child should ever have to understand. But now, when fear came, it didn't come alone. Ranger always noticed first, a change in her breathing, a tension in her shoulders, a silence that lasted too long. He would stand, move closer, press his body gently against hers, grounding her, anchoring her in the present. You're safe. I'm here. You're not alone." He never needed words. One afternoon, Lena's foster mother watched from the porch as Lena and Ranger sat in the yard together. Lena was reading out loud, not because Ranger needed to hear the words, but because she needed someone to listen. "And the night," she read softly, "stood guard until the danger passed." Ranger's ears flicked. The foster mother smiled through tears. "He's not just protecting her," she murmured. "He's teaching her how to feel safe." Months passed, then a year. Ranger no longer ran. He walked, carefully, thoughtfully, choosing comfort over speed. Lena adjusted without complaint, matching his pace instinctively. Some bonds don't need explanations, they simply adapt. One evening, Lena found the old collar in a drawer, the faded tag, the scratches, the weight of what it represented. She knelt beside Ranger and held it up. "This was when you were a police dog," she said. Ranger watched quietly. "And this," she added, resting her hand on his chest, "is when you became my family." Ranger leaned into her touch. He had followed commands his entire life. Now, he followed love. Ranger passed peacefully one quiet morning. No alarms, no chaos, no fear. Lena lay beside him on the floor, her head against his chest, listening until the steady rhythm slowed and finally rested. "You stayed," she whispered through tears. "You stayed until I was okay." And somehow that made it hurt less. Years later, Lena would tell his story, not as a tragedy but as proof. Proof that loyalty doesn't end when a badge comes off. Proof that protection isn't always loud or violent. Proof that sometimes the bravest thing a hero can do is stay. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in loyalty beyond duty, and subscribe for more powerful canine stories that remind us what family truly means. Because some heroes never leave, they wait.